Today we're going to test the patterning of 12 gauge 00 buckshot loads. We're going to be using an Italian manufactured load. So this is different from American buckshot ammo in two ways. Typically American ammunition has buffering amongst the pellets, ground filler, plastic filler that helps to prevent deformation as they move down the bore, and it allows the pellets to exit the bore remaining more round. This European ammunition does not have that, so we would expect to see more pellet deformation, probably a somewhat wider pattern. American ammunition also uses like a star type crimp, whereas the European ammunition is using a roll crimp with a clear plastic wad over it. So will that affect anything? I doubt it. It's just a different method of making the shell. Then we're going to try these in a variety of different guns with different factors involved. So we have Steve's Sawn off 11-inch barrel Stoger, a Remington TAC 14 14-inch barrel, Kel-Tec KS7 with an 18-inch barrel, my Remington 870 Police with an 18-inch barrel, and finally my Stevens Model 311 with 28-inch barrels choked full and modified. So we're also going to see what effect not only barrel length but finally choke has on the buckshot patterns. And buckshot usually does not respond to choke. You can use choke to tighten buckshot patterns, but it doesn't work the same as it does with small birdshot. So I'm not sure exactly what it's even going to do. Otherwise, all the other barrels are cylinder bored, so the only variable is going to be barrel length. It's widely believed that, sawn-off shotguns like this throw very wide open patterns. I don't think that's really going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a significant difference in patterning between the 11-inch barrels and the 18s. There may not even be a significant difference with the 28-inch barrels, but I really don't know what they're going to do. So we are about to find out what happens now. All right, this is the 11-inch sawn-off Stoger coach gun with 12 gauge 00 buck. Going to pattern it at 15 yards. And here we go. I hit high and left, so I'm going to aim lower on the next barrel. Wow, that's a good pattern. Look at that. So this one I hit high up. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3 of the pellets are off there. But I didn't expect to see this. This distributed vertically and this distributed horizontally.
What do you think that is attributed to? Anything?
I think it's random.
Just how it comes out of the bore.
Yeah, I think that's all completely random. I would not have expected to see a pattern this nice and tight at this range from this short of a barrel, and then it distributed like this. Like I would have expected it to be more round. That is surprising. So now we're moving up to the Remington TAC 14. So the barrel's a little bit longer, 3 inches, still cylinder bore though. I don't expect to see any real difference in the patterning at all, but we're gonna find out. Look at that. It's actually a bigger pattern. But we'll fire a second one. Let's see what that does. So there's our first one, which is pretty nicely distributed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then here is our second pattern, which looks different. So a bunch of the pellets clumped up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, there they are. So this is the first shot, and this is the second from the 14-inch barrel Remington 870. It's like the 11-inch barrel's pattern tighter, which I would not have expected to see. But you do get gun-to-gun variations because of things like changes in the forcing cone from the chamber into the bore and bore diameter. That changes things. European manufactured guns usually have a tighter bore diameter than American guns. Typical 12 gauge American bore diameter is 729. In Europe, it can run as low as 10 thousandths smaller, but it's usually running like 720, 725. Does that make a difference? It can. So that may have happened. I'll start with my Remington 870. So this is set up like a 1970s era police gun. So I'm going to deploy the stock and I will single load. So this has an 18 1/16 inch barrel from the factory. I already know exactly where it's going to hit, so. That's exactly what I would expect to see. A well-centered and nicely distributed pattern. Nothing unexpected there. So basically identical by the look of it. I mean, there's really no difference. Those are essentially the same size, essentially the same distribution. Although I'm now starting to think that this particular load tends to distribute the pellets horizontally. Buckshot distributes randomly, so you never know what it's going to do. Finally, traditional side-by-side sporting double. This is an old Stevens Model 311C. So this is a 1960s gun. I think it was made in like 66 or 67. Barrels are choked, I believe, full and modified. I expect to see something different happen now. We would think that the choking would cause noticeably tighter patterns, but buckshot does not always respond to choke. Sometimes it has no effect on it at all. Sometimes it creates an oddly shaped pattern. Sometimes it creates a pattern that looks like a donut with everything around the edges, nothing in the middle. I don't know what it's going to do. This is a 28-inch barrel. I will fire the left barrel first, which is more tightly choked. Now the right. So, it doesn't look like there's much difference from one barrel to the next, but these patterns look different than the cylinder bore barrels, don't they? Look how they distribute it differently. It's like the tighter choke actually created a more nicely distributed pattern. That's like the perfect buckshot pattern. That's exactly what you would hope to see from every load. And that is a tighter choke barrel, and I cannot see any difference between these. So, is it the longer barrel? Is it the tighter choke? Is it just a different gun? We really don't know. But those results are a little surprising. Okay, so for the final test, I'm gonna try light birdshot loads from the 11-inch sawn-off shotgun that has unchoked barrels, and then again for my 28-inch Stevens 311. So now I'm gonna expect to see a big difference. Choke has a much greater effect on birdshot than it does on buck. So I expect to see big wide patterns from the sawn-off, and I expect to see fairly tight patterns from the traditional hunting gun. That was much easier to deal with than the buckshot load. Maybe we should see what it did before I fire the second barrel. So I hit high and left again on the first barrel, but yeah, that's gonna be a big wide pattern. So I'll aim lower next time with the second barrel. But that's what I expected to see. We're gonna fire the second barrel. Hopefully I'll be able to get it better centered on the paper, but this load is much easier to manage than the buckshot. Ah, that felt good. I think I got it pretty well centered that time. Nope, I still hit high and left. So I hit like a little bit lower. So that's my sighting error. I'm trying to sight down the barrels. but I'm hitting high and left. Okay, so I'm gonna fire a bird load from the full choke barrel of my Stevens 311, and then we're gonna have Steve try one out of the sawn off in the hopes that he will shoot it better than I did. Look how tight that is.
Wow.
So that's the effect of full choke on birdshot. Really makes a big difference. That's exactly what it's meant to do, to extend your range when you're shooting at ducks or something like that. And it works exactly the way we would think it does.
All right, so I'm just gonna give a try with the right barrel, same shot that he was just shooting with, the Birdshot light load stuff. This is my gun, so I think, just a little bit more familiarity with how it shoots. So I'm just gonna give it a try and hope for the best. It's been a while since I shot it, but we'll see what happens here.
Wow, look at that! You got it, nice.
So we got, the whole cardboard basically all the way out to...
That is well centered. You got it right on center, all right.
So the small Birdshot's hard to pick up on camera. I'm gonna make a few marks just to show you kind of where we're at, side to side, up and down. So the highest pellet I'm seeing here is here. Highest pellet to the left I'm seeing here. Bottom is all the way down to here. And right here is the farthest shot left, or right.
So we are seeing a huge difference in distribution of the pellets from the buckshot to the birdshot.
Yeah, and I don't know what the standard width of this piece of cardboard is, but it's got to be close to 24 inches, if not around 2 feet, around 24 inches spread. I think either way, easily either way. So that is a pretty big difference. Now, I guess we don't know as far as what the choke, just a smooth bore, like if his shotgun was just open choke and no choke at all, what that would look like. But going from a choke with a 28-inch barrel versus 11-inch barrel with nothing, we have this versus this.
I think the most of the difference we're seeing is because of choke. But barrel length is definitely also a factor.
Yeah. So this was his original shot. Some of mine bled into there as well, but you'll see on the original video.
You can see that most of the pellets in this are still in the center. So most of the load is still right here, and just a small amount of it is starting to move out there. Okay, I'm gonna shoot buckshot again from Steve's sawn off. I've moved up rather closer. Hopefully I can get a more centered pattern this time. And I'm gonna try using a different grip, just aiming by the feel of the gun. And here we go.
About 7.5 yards out.
Okay, so we're at about 7.5 yards. This time, I'm gonna use the more traditional sawn-off shotgun grip and see what I can do. That was far more comfortable than the way I did it before. I was actually able to aim much better that way. So that was right where I wanted to put them. And look at these nice tight patterns. So the myth of a sawn-off shotgun like this, throwing, a big wide open pattern that just fills a whole entire room, we can see that's complete nonsense. These are very nicely distributed, nice tight patterns. Once you get the feel of it, you can deliver accurate aim fire from a gun like this, and you can see the results of that right here.
I think it might be worth noting that you do see a larger spread from the smaller Birdshot or game loads than out of the buckshot.
Huge difference.
Which could it be that there's so many more and so tightly packed that they just maybe bounce off of each other and sort of spread out in that way?
Yeah, I think because of the much smaller number of pellets, that we're mainly seeing that effect. Also, the very small pellets are aerodynamically different. So because of their much smaller size and lower weight, passage through the air is going to affect them much more rapidly than it does the much larger, heavier pellets. So it would make sense to me that we would see that causing the small pellets to veer off to the sides a lot faster than the large, heavy ones. That could be what we're seeing. That could be the primary cause of seeing this nice, tight buckshot pattern versus the very large birdshot patterns. Okay, so I'm going to try the Sawn off with buckshot once again, but using a different aiming technique. Looks like hand over top the barrels is the way to go for me, because I was feeling a little anxious the first time I touched them off, and it did almost hit me in the face. It was awful close. So these buckshot loads feel like they have about 3 times the recoil of the birdshot load. Like that felt like, wasn't bad at all, but these are stiff. So I'm gonna see what I can do using my different aiming technique at the greater distance. See how it goes. That felt pretty good. At least the second barrel, I think I got pretty well centered. I'm not sure about the first. I think I got both barrels on there. So this was the second barrel for sure. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those are somewhere. Yep, and first barrel's up over here. So I was able to do much better putting my hand over the barrels and just aiming by the feel of the whole gun, rather than trying to sight down the barrels like I did the first time.
So would you say, though, between this first shot, or these first 2 shots, versus the second 2 shots that aren't circled, has that spread opened up some with another
yes.
7.5 yards?
Yes, it sure has. There's definitely a noticeable difference in the pattern size between 7 and 15 yards. So it's more than double the range. And I would say that the size of the pattern has also approximately doubled, very approximately. And the thing about buckshot is you get random distribution of the pellets too. So, your pattern size can change a great deal because a couple of pellets wind up over here and most of them wind up down there. And we've been seeing that happen to some extent. But, greater range, greater pellet spread, but still, it's not that large a pattern, even at 15 yards, even from these very short cylinder bore barrels. So again, the myth of the sawn-off shotgun does not hold up. So some of the things that we saw are pretty much what I expected to see, like the very small, tight pattern from the long, full choke barrel with the birdshot. No surprise there. What I was surprised by was the perfectly distributed buckshot pattern from the long full choke barrel. And I was also real surprised to see that there was essentially 0 difference between the 11-inch cylinder bore barrel and the 28-inch full choke barrel. I would have expected to see some kind of difference. And that it also appeared that the longer cylinder bore barrels actually seemed to throw somewhat larger patterns than the sawed-off. I did expect that to throw a slightly larger pattern. I didn't think it was going to be anywhere near as tight as we saw it at a range of 15 yards. So this shows us that these very short barrel shotguns, quite viable at a longer range, as long as you are able to accurately aim it. It was definitely significantly more difficult to accurately use the sawn-off shotgun than the traditional guns. Felt like I was starting to get better at it using the different aiming technique. There's basically 2 kinds of mythology with sawn-off shotguns. One is that it just flings pellets all over a wide area. Well, we've seen that doesn't happen. And so it's useless past extremely short range. That's obviously not true. It is substantially more difficult to use. It requires a completely different technique, and you know, you're gonna have a lot more practice required to be able to deliver accurate fire with it. But it is viable, no doubt about it. If you've got the knack of it, you can make it work for you, and then it is quite a formidable weapon. All right, well, thanks for taking a look at this. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed shooting it. And that's all for now.